So we open our scene on a long and lonely mountain road in the Carpathian wilderness. The year is 1444 AD, and the camera focuses in on the three Canaanites who are journeying from the ruins of what was once a a relatively peaceful journey until they had run into the events leading up to the monastery of St. Timothy. Having just met with the ancient Japheth, and indeed his sire, the antediluvian Cappadocius himself, the three young Canaanites are journeying back to Castle Deverick, where Lord Hardestadt awaits them. They were to deliver news to the Cappadocians about the plot being fomented against Japheth by the Giovanni, in order to earn the goodwill of Clan Cappadocian towards the newly forming Camarilla, as Hardestadt and the other founders are calling it. Unfortunately, Japheth turned out to be a very pacifist individual, and they also uncovered some perhaps very disturbing things about his sire, causing them to question what Cappadocius indeed intends, as he had spoken much about things like devouring God, becoming God, and bringing heaven to earth, and things that sounded quite unusual. But with that, when we last left off, the characters were engaged in conversation as they journeyed to Castle Deverick. And the camera is going to focus in on the three of them, as you can actually see the castle in the distance. It's not going to be long before you arrive and have to deal with Hardestadt and the other founders.
Out of character, who's not with us?
Because you said 3.
Did I say 3? I meant 4.
Okay. Had us worried.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, Daniel died.
What?
Sorry about that. Yeah, 4. I meant to say 4.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to turn the scene over to you guys. Like I said, you can see Castle Deverick in the distance. You guys are going to be there in under an hour. So you can remain silent and continue on, or you can engage in dialogue if you want.
So out of character, that whole conversation that happened last week where Valentino told us what Hardestadt had said and all that?
Yes, that happened.
Okay.
Then Diego's not speaking. He's in a sullen, angry silence.
Julieta as well. She's she had slipped off of Valentino's horse, and now she's probably walking with Diego at the same pace as he, and she's just kind of like staring forward, and she's silent as well.
Cameron is atop one of the horses, and he looks very stern and angry about the situation, but he is going to remain silent while they move into the castle.
Likewise, Valentino will maintain the unanimous awkward silence.
And as you advance towards the castle, you can see the firelit torches of the people on the parapets moving between the crenellations of the castle walls, and the only other light being allowed is the moonlight filtering down out of the night sky. The portcullis raises and the drawbridge lowers soon after seeing you, the four of you approach, and you can hear the shouts from the sentries. And it isn't long before the four of you are advancing into the castle. We'll switch our scene. The four of you are met in the courtyard by Rodrigo, Hardestadt's faithful ghoul. He says very little and motions to the four of you to follow him, as clearly this is no time for pleasantries. You can tell that all of the mortal men, at least the few that you can see walking the parapets of the castle walls, and those few sentries standing around, there's a kind of nervous energy in the air that you can sense. You don't even have to be particularly paying attention to get the sense of that. There's apparently a lot of activity going on in the castle this night, and there's several people walk by you, several groups of people rush by you carrying weapons and supplies and bundled up trunks, and you can see the seneschal of the castle barking orders at some of the staff as you are hurried by, and Rodrigo walks you through the keep up into the upper levels where the founders had their meetings. And there are no mortals up here. In fact, as you advance into the war room, you can see there are only a few of the founders here. Hardestadt, Raphael de Crozon, and Mistress Fanchon are standing around the table that is scattered with maps, and they're conversing in intense tones. Also, Adana de Sforza is off to the side, although she is not engaging in the conversation, and she looks a little sullen. But as you enter, Hardestadt glances up. Ah, the whelps return. His declaration is immediately followed by the silence of Raphael and Mistress Fanchon, who straighten up and look at the four of you. And what news from the monastery of St. Timothy? Hardestadt says as he straightens his back and looks at you with that cold, piercing gaze.
Valentino steps forward, bowing lightly. My lord, unfortunately, no good news. We delivered the message to Japheth, and we were visited by his father, Cappadocius. Japheth is aware of the intent by Claudius Giovanni to take his life, but he believes that his father knows best and that he will not stand in the way of his father's plans, which, as he admitted them to us, are, as was briefly discussed before, apparently to an attempt to devour God and bring heaven to earth, some such madness.
Raphael de Corazon arches a brow at your explanation, and Mistress Fanchon looks inscrutable while Hardestadt narrows his eyes tightly at this. What sort of nonsense is this? You interacted with Cappadocius.
He appeared to us in some kind of form, some explosion of light. I do not know if he was actually there or not, but he did speak to us and to Japheth, unveiling these plans. He seemed quite adamant. This was no jest. Even
What do the rest of you have to say about this? Hardestadt says, cutting you off.
He speaks the truth. It seems Cappadocius has gone mad. But his son, being a loyal one, will not go against his wishes, and so does not care if he dies.
Hardestadt continues to look at the four of you, clearly wanting more.
Japheth seemed perturbed by this revelation. I do not believe he knew that this was his father's plan.
The camera's going to pan to Julieta to see what she is doing.
Julieta looks over to Valentino and then to Diego. And eventually she looks back to Hardestadt and kind of shrugs, almost nonchalantly. It's quite clear that she thinks the whole ordeal was rather ridiculous. Well, they're all insane.
Finally, some sense, Mistress Van Schoen speaks up, and from a Malkavian. The camera shifts to look at Guerman de Gascoigne to see how he's taking in this scene.
Guerman seems troubled, and that is readily available on his face. His eyes dart back and forth between the tables and the chairs, almost if he's searching for an answer or something to say. But he says nothing, and his glare and his eyes just linger down towards his feet.
And so, even with evidence, they will not accept the plot of Claudius Giovanni. Hardestadt murmurs to himself, glancing down before looking back up. Very well, whelps. Seems you have earned a modicum of regard for yourselves. Hardestadt relaxes somewhat, and it's an odd thing to behold, as he very rarely appears to move at all, ramrod straight vampire though he is. What make of you this, Raphael? He says, glancing sidelong at Raphael de Corazon, and who is, the beautiful Spaniard. He pauses for a moment to consider. We must ambush them at the monastery, catch them in the act. The evidence will be irrefutable, and then we will be able to approach Cappadocius and his clan, perhaps bring them into our Camarilla. Hardestadt nods. I agree. Inauspicious though your beginnings may be, Hardestadt says as he turns to look at the four of you. Your trustworthiness seems to be valid, at least for now. The goals here at play are far bigger than you or I, of course. We must unify the clans out of mutual self-interest and self-preservation. The four of you are far too young to understand the necessity of this, but however, unified clans can react to the mounting threat of humanity. They are shockingly populous this last century, despite the recent Black Death and the Crusades to thin their numbers. Claudius Giovanni must be exposed and stopped because he threatens our union. The Giovanni are not proving to be the investment I had hoped they would be for Clan Cappadocians. But an ambush must be arranged. Yes, I agree. I will take a moment to confer with Lady Mistress Van Schoen. You four. Go out into the hallway and await my word. I will be with you anon. Hardestadt dismisses the four of you with a wave of his gauntleted hand.
Valentino, go ahead.
Guerman will immediately turn on his heel and begin heading out the door. He seems to not want to be there any longer than he has to.
Valentino bows lightly and also follows Guerman out.
Diego's lip quirks up into a sort of pseudo-sneer, but he follows as well.
Julietta does the same. She will swiftly turn and follow the others.
All right. So we're going to switch scene. The four of you emerge from the war room out into the hallway, which is, as I mentioned earlier, draped with opulent tapestries and suits of armor and coats of arms of the Deverick family. And as the four of you congregate in that hallway, you can see Raphael exit with you, though he walks directly past the four of you. You know that the other founders are on this level of the castle. You glimpsed some of them as you walked here. And clearly you have some time before Hardestadt summons the four of you again as he makes his plans with Mistress Fanchon. So I'm going to turn the scene over to you guys. You can converse with each other, or you can depart and wander the castle to see if you can speak with some of the others here, if you so desire, or you can simply wait.
I am eager for this chance to ambush Claudius and Jadwiga. My vengeance was stolen from me. I would not see it stolen again.
It is liberating to know that your sire is dead, Diego says. I don't have to worry about ever seeing that creature again.
Caraman is pacing back and forth between the door, almost haughtily and angrily.
What troubles you, Garamond?
This plan, as he motions to the door, an ambush is reckless. Clearly, they have never made a battle plan with the concern of others.
I do not see another option. Japheth would not come with us or defend himself. We can only act on the offensive. What would you have us do otherwise?
I would not have them ambush at the church. Clearly, they have no consideration for Japheth's life. They don't care if he survives. They want to catch Giovanni in the act.
There is one question we failed to ask. What would happen if they did succeed? What exactly does Claudius want to do with this old vampire's blood?
That escapes me. As he begins to continue his pace.
Julieta watches the three of them, and then she looks back to Diego. Well, I'm sure if he did consume his blood, he would become more powerful.
These founders are powerful beings. Powerful even more so than perhaps our sires and Claudius. I have faith in this plan.
Julieta.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Julieta just looks to Valentino as he speaks, and then she looks over to Garamond, because clearly he is pretty angry and upset about this plan, and she speaks. Garamond, they do not care for our lives. We will be sent to do this, and if we die, they will be none the wiser, none the better.
It is not my life I am concerned for.
What, the Cappadocians?
Japheth.
Valentino almost winces at the name, being reminded of such a pure individual in contrast to himself.
Julieta kind of rolls her eyes when she hears Garamond say this. Did you not see his falsity?
Falsity? Garamond stops and squares his shoulders with Julieta.
Yes, his falsity. She kind of stands at attention now and looks him dead in the eye. He will only listen to his master. And his master, you heard what he was saying. It was insanity.
And this was a surprise to Japheth. Clearly he has nothing to do with this plan.
But still he obeys.
And if he is as powerful as ever, could he refuse?
Diego shrugs.
Julieta kind of, she looks from Diego back to Garamond. You act as though he is a saint. He is a Cainite, just like us.
and
No,
yet he
not like
uses
us.
his power for good. Could you not see the radiance on him? You not feel it?
Compared to him, we are just awful on the bottom of a boot.
I have to agree. He's a fool to let himself die. If that is what sanctity means for a vampire, I would not see it in myself. I would not let myself be destroyed for such holiness.
Julieta listens to them, and eventually she kind of takes a step back and crosses her arms in front of her chest and shrugs somewhat. I do not know what it was that radiated off of him. Yes, it felt holy, but who knows what it could have been?
Garmin kind of shakes his head. I know what it was. Unlike you, I felt it.
I did as well.
His power, his ability. It is not his own, it is divine.
It's unbecoming of our kind. Valentino shakes his head.
And yet, a mere piece of wood separates us from discussing a battle plan that involves his death.
We defeated them when they were greater in number. Surely the Founders will use us as tools again, and we will prove victorious again. I would not fear for Javith. Have confidence in the victory that we are guaranteed.
My confidence is shaken. Because if they are so powerful as Hardestadt believes, and as we know it to be, then how is Giovanni so confident that he can overcome them?
He's cunning. He will have a plan.
He is also quite arrogant.
What do we make of these shrouds that we were given? Do you think they mean anything? Do you think Japheth was genuine? He looks to Garmin.
I don't know. As he turns to Julieta, arrogance is often followed by ability. This is why I'm troubled. As he kind of stops and leans up against a pillar, crossing his arm.
Julieta, she looks to Garmin one last time, and then her eyes kind of slant over to Valentino and Diego, and she remains silent at this point. She has nothing really further to say. She's kind of contemplating inwardly about everything.
Perhaps for now we should consider more pressing matters. And he'll look at Valentino very seriously. How long has it been since you have fed? You are looking gaunt, my friend.
Hearing this and being reminded of his own hunger, which rarely escapes his mind, he kind of brings up his hand to his face as if in pain. It's been difficult to control. I should see to this soon. I've been most enervated since our engagement with those knights.
Perhaps Lord Hardestadt will let you sup from the barrels again.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said out of character.
Oh, he said perhaps Lord Hardestadt will let you sup from the barrels again.
Yes, I might avail myself to those if I can find them again in this labyrinth. Something occurs to me. This Durga Sin, the old gypsy we once saw, where has she been? I have not seen her in some time. Was she not with them as the founders?
At the mention of Dorgaston, Gehrman's head will pick up as he looks at them. Now that you bring it up, I do not remember her. I have not seen her in some time.
Perhaps we may ask Hardestadt about this. Or perhaps that would not be wise. He searches the floor in thought. I do not know.
She does seem very wise, does she not? Perhaps she could have some input on this.
Valentino nods. If there's nothing else, I'm going to see if I can find that room once more before I lose control. Excuse me. He makes his way out of the room in the direction of this place he went to before.
And as you leave the hallway, Valentino, you can pick your way through the corridor fairly easily. You were brought to the secret passage which leads down beneath the castle several times. You're able to find your way back there quite easily. And in fact, in so doing, you run into Rodrigo along the way, who is lighting torches down in the tunnels, and he jumps a bit as though startled at your presence, but he does turn around and look at you, slightly surprised. Oh, Valentino, everything is alright with Lord Hardestadt?
More or less. You seem startled. What seems to be the matter?
Oh, there's just a lot of preparation going on. Lord Hardestadt does not mean to stay at this castle very much longer. Preparations for some sort of plan or something. The Lord does not keep me privy to his stratagems. We're going to pause for a moment to do a roll.
Yes, he seems to be having the entire castle up in a fit of flurry of activity. I was just on my way to see if I could find some of this blood. I've been most drained for some time.
Ah, I see. Well, we have any number of blood from different stock here. Might I show you the way?
Yes, please do.
And with that, without much more ado, Rodrigo turns to guide you deeper into the castle. And as he does so, the camera will fade out, and we will return to the hallway where Gehrman and Julieta and Diego remain left alone to ponder their current situation.
Do you think they'll have any more use for us now?
If anybody's talking, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Gehrman leans up against one of the stone pillars with his arms crossed. He looks up to Diego as if kind of knocked out of a trance. What?
Well, he shrugs. They say they want to give us accolades, but I don't know that they have any more use for us now.
Gehrman kind of shrugs a little. There's always a use for soldiers that are willing.
Julietta, she is kind of eyeing the two of them, and eventually she sighs somewhat and looks about. Is there anywhere for her to sit?
Not presently in this hallway. It's clearly not a place meant for congregation, although there are many chambers off to the south and to the west that you could probably explore.
Well, she does feel as though she wants a moment to herself, and so she doesn't say anything to the two of them. She merely turns and departs, making her way down the corridor, trying to find a place where she can kind of have a quiet moment.
So the camera's going to follow Julietta as she emerges into what appears to be a sitting room, as it is. The shutters on the door, or the windows, are shut and barred at this time of night, and there are small tapers lit in the room, which illuminates the shadowy corners, although it is not a brightly lit room by any means. And as you emerge, Julietta, you see that you've come upon one of the founders. Of course, you didn't mean to, but the moment you walk into the room, and Camilla Baines turns and looks at you with her wide, dreamy eyes. The English woman with her long blonde hair and dressed in a noble woman's gown this evening.
Oh, hello, sweetheart.
Julietta had her hand kind of playing nonchalantly in her skirts of her dress against the locket that she has of her son, and she had planned to sit and kind of gaze at the picture of her son that she has. She's missing him, and when she enters the room, Camilla's voice kind of awakens her from a dazed state, and she immediately stops and looks up to meet this woman's gaze. Oh, Lady Baines, is it?
Please, call me Camilla.
She murmurs softly, immediately moving towards you, as though to take you into her embrace.
Julietta is somewhat apprehensive on the inside, but she allows forward and kind of clasp her arms around her shoulders.
And she wraps you in an embrace, a deep hug that reminds you of your own gentle mother, and even coos softly as she brushes her cheek against your forehead, as she is a bit taller than you. And this sudden affection from her is shocking, and just as shocking as what comes next, as she strokes your hair, and then suddenly her fingers tighten to grip your hair at the scalp and yank your head back. "What is this, you little wretch?" she hisses as she looks down with her fangs bared at the locket around your neck. She reaches up and rips the locket from your throat.
The locket was in her skirts. It wasn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were wearing it around your neck.
No, it was. She's had it in her skirts this whole time. She hasn't worn it.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, instead, she hisses, "What have you been looking at?"
Julietta immediately is taken aback by this, and her hand kind of like clenches around the skirt area that has the locket within it. And she narrows her hues after a moment and says, "Let me go, lady."
I will not let you go, not while you foment treachery against our Camarilla. I know you hide some sort of treason in your skirts, you little slut.
She grips your hair tighter before softening and,
Oh, poor baby. Look at you.
and she begins stroking your hair again, brushing the backs of her fingers against your cheek.
You poor baby. You just don't know where to turn, do you? Don't worry, Mommy's here, and I will take good care of you. I know it must seem very frightening with all these monsters all around you, but don't worry. I'm here to help you and give you any comfort you may need.
She begins stroking you again as though nothing had happened.
Julietta is going to try and just wiggle herself out of this woman's grip. I mean, she is clearly, she is just, there is some sort of fear that crosses her face. This woman is insane.
Camilla allows you to extract yourself from her embrace, and her face softens as she looks after you.
Where are you going?
At first, her expression is complete and total anger at this woman, but it's clear that this woman is just not picking up on her body language, her expressions, and it sort of dawns on her in that instant that this woman is part of her clan, and she starts to have this like undermining fear kind of boil up in her that this could be her down the road. And she doesn't want to be anywhere near it. So she slowly starts backing away from her and mutters something along the lines of, "Excuse me, my lady, I have forgotten that I need to meet back up with my comrades. We are to hear from Hardestadt soon." And she sort of kind of hurriedly turns and makes her way back to the other two. She in no way wants to be alone with this crazy woman.
It is with a bolt of horror that you realize that Camilla Baines has raised her arms as though to take you into her loving embrace once more, slowly walking towards you as you fumble with the door and quickly shut it behind you, leaving that room and moving back to where Gehrman and Diego are. In the meantime, the camera is going to pan back to Gehrman and Diego, who were left alone momentarily, either engaging in dialogue or departing on their own for some other purpose.
Diego's pacing back and forth with his hands clasped behind his back. He seems to be having some sort of internal argument because his lips are moving, but he's not really speaking out loud.
Kierman has allowed himself to slide down the pillar that he was leaning against onto the floor, where he sits in quiet contemplation with his eyes closed.
So the two of you remain there in silence?
Yes.
Yes.
So it isn't long before you see Julietta return. Only a minute or two after she had left. What are we seeing as Julietta emerges from the hallway back to where Diego and Gehrman are standing, Julietta.
Julietta is smoothly walking towards them, but her face is reading something. She's really, her expression's rather stone and stern, and there is a twinkle of annoyance in her eyes as she kind of storms back over to them.
Cameron's eyes will slowly open as he sees Julietta returning. Did you find what you were looking for?
Julietta kind of sharply looks over to Diego, and she lifts her chin somewhat. Not in the least.
Diego doesn't even seem to register that he's been looked at. He continues to pace.
Julietta looks from Diego over to Garamond once more. That crazy loon, what is her name? Lady Baines? She took me completely off guard down the hall.
Cameron, his eyes fully open now as he turns his head. She took you off guard. He arches an eyebrow.
Yes, she took me off guard. I know you haven't spoken to her, but I just have, and she's completely insane. I don't know what's wrong with her. One minute she acts motherly almost, and the next, she's just savage. I know we cannot trust her.
Garamond kind of eyes Julietta and thinks about what she said as he kind of looks down the hall where she came from. I wouldn't have trusted her before all of this.
So with that, the camera is going to fade away, and we are going to emerge in the bowels of the castle. A different scene. Deep in the chambers beneath Deverett Castle, we see Rodrigo and Valentino emerge into that dimly lit room with the tapers all around, and we see the cots lined up against the far wall where they had rested a few days before. We also see the casks of blood which line the wall, which you know they contain blood, Valentino, as you can smell the stench that comes out of them from between the cracks of the boards. And you also see the cups, which also still smell strongly of blood. Rodrigo puts his torch in the nearby sconce before turning to walk towards the barrels. What takes your flavor, my lord? I happen to know that you share blood with Lord Hardestadt. You are not his progeny, but certainly of his clan.
Indeed. There was a woman in Belgrade. I haven't tasted anyone like her, and to keep anything else down. He begins pacing the barrels, seeing if he can get a scent of that again and pick it out by smell.
Your senses are overridden with hunger, and all of the stench of blood around in this room just seem to blend together. Try though you might to pick out individual notes in the bouquet that seems to be wafting from these barrels. It's just about impossible, especially given your preoccupation with the beast, which is growling in the back of your mind. It's like a weight, a psychic pressure that is constantly on you. Rodrigo watches you for a moment before saying, could you describe her, my lord? I know that those of Lord Hardestadt's lineage have a particular flavor towards different mortals. Their damned thirst can only be slaked upon the blood of those they find palatable.
I did not exactly know much about her, except that she was a young woman of considerable beauty. Nothing else satisfies me. He continues walking up and down, feeling this pressure in the back of his mind, just wanting to reach out and drink all of them.
Well, perhaps over time you might learn the particulars about what it is that brings out that flavor in the blood. Lord Hardestadt has often told me that human beings translate their soul's essence into the blood. It comes out in a flavor, and only those of his line are able to taste the individual notes of that soul essence. I am a simple man, but that is how my lord explained it to me. But let me see if I can help you. And Rodrigo, who by the way is, I should remind all the viewers, an incredibly handsome man, like unbelievably good looking, very young, probably in his early 20s. He walks over to one of the casks and seems to study it before moving directly to the next one and taking a goblet to scoop it underneath the tap before turning on the nozzle, and a slow trickle of blood begins to fill the goblet. He twists the tap and turns it off before approaching you with the cup, holding it out, an invitation. Perhaps this, my lord.
Valentino takes it readily and attempts to drink it to taste the flavor.
You can attempt to drink it, but the moment you bring it close to your lips, the stench hits you that there's something wrong with this blood. Immediately, the smell turns you off. In fact, if you were mortal, it would have caused your stomach to immediately flip.
Oh! He pulls his face away and extends his arm, putting the goblet far away. No.
No, of course not. Rodrigo reaches up to calmly and smoothly pluck the goblet from your hand and turns away to take another, and he takes a moment to consider before moving to one of the smaller kegs at the far end of the table before filling the cup with the blood therein. Perhaps this, a young girl, fresh. I understand she was brought in from the countryside recently. Rodrigo says as he turns to offer you the cup.
This time a little bit more reluctantly, he takes the goblet and slowly brings it to his nose to try and smell it.
Immediately the aroma captivates you. This is the smell that you remembered. This is the taste that you remembered, flowing like a cloud, just floating over your tongue and down your throat. And it was only then that you truly knew peace, when you were tasting this scent, this flavor. The beast almost immediately seizes your arm as you feel the urge to guzzle that blood.
Valentino's eyes widen and he immediately drinks this goblet of blood when he realizes that he's found it, savoring the taste.
As the blood flows over your tongue and down your throat and fills you up, the blood fills an emptiness in you that you weren't totally aware of, like a pain that is so constant you almost forget about it. And yet, once the relief of that pain comes to you, you become so aware of this hollow inside you that is being filled up with this rich, sweet nourishment. It's more than food, it's more than opiate, it's life itself that you are filling. And you, as you lower the goblet, you can see just over the rim Rodrigo's contented smile as he seems pleased with himself. I thought you would like that.
Valentino closes his eyes briefly and feels this pressure release somewhere behind his eyes. He feels as though he could almost weep from how beautiful this taste was. And he, with a smile, returns a goblet to Rodrigo. Thank you. What was that?
I know little, my lord. Lord Hardestadt has the men combing the countryside regularly for... Rodrigo looks somewhat uncomfortable as he says this. Fresh blood. But nourishment is vital to the lords and ladies living in this... residing in this castle. It's sustenance, and, of course, sustenance is vital. Rodrigo trails off, looking somewhat hollow for a moment before he blinks and looks back to you. Only that she was a fresh young girl from one of the nearby villages. We know little about her. Her remains are long disposed of.
You seem most disquieted at the requirement of our kind for this fresh blood.
I do not relish having to hunt other men and women of God and bring them into the jaws of the beast, but such is the price for my immortality, such is the price for my place in Lord Hardestadt's retinue.
Do you regret having that place?
Rodrigo is silent for a moment. Sometimes. But I am ever a faithful servant of Lord Hardestadt. That is what I am. It is all I can be now. I only hope to never be damned, as you are. For I'm confident that my soul is still within the Lord's grasp. If you will forgive me, I mean no offense.
None is taken. Please feel free to speak candidly with me at any time.
Rodrigo smiles and seems more put at ease by your words.
What do you know of Hardestadt and the Founder's desires for this Camarilla? Has he spoken much of it to you?
Yes, hasn't he spoken of the Camarilla to you? I understand you're involved in that business.
In some extent he has spoken of it, but it seems still such an abstract concept. Perhaps I am too new to this blood to fully appreciate his meaning.
Alright, go ahead and make a... Let's see. Make a charisma empathy roll. Difficulty will be 5.
Can I spend a willpower on this?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, 5 successes. That's a tremendous success. And immediately, you see that Rodrigo has softened towards you. Clearly, he doesn't have a lot of people to talk to, and you can tell that you have somewhat of a rapport with this young man as he immediately shrugs and tightens his brow slightly. Well, they speak of things like mutual self-interest and their self-preservation, but I know that Lord Hardestadt speaks of punishing enemies, and they all have their enemies. There are these self-willed elders, and they talk of destroying entire lineages of their mortal enemies, and they hunt this Giovanni because I know it is in their nature to hunt. His destruction will thrill them. And he pauses as though he doesn't know if he should continue, and you sense for a moment that you might be able to encourage him.
Please, go on, Rodrigo. You have nothing to fear from me.
Well, it's only in his private moments. Lord Hardestadt speaks of what I could only describe as a lust for power. He is a lord. It's in his nature to rule, and they see this Camarilla as a means to get the clans to play by his rules. And under his jurisdiction and support his efforts to crush any dissenters to that. This Giovanni is also making a grab for power, and Hardestadt does not care for that, but I apologize. I should not speak of my lord's matters.
Valentino kind of raises a hand and places on Rodrigo's shoulder reassuringly. So as I said, my friend, you have nothing to fear from me. Gives him a pat.
I am glad that you were brought into Lord Hardestadt's blood, Sir Valentino. I think that you will be a good addition to the blood, damned though you may be, for what it's worth.
Valentino nods and smiles. Rodrigo, you may always count on me as an ally of yours.
If I may, Valentino, have you set upon this Jadwiga? Lord Hardestadt is very eager to see her destruction.
Valentino's eyes narrow at the mention of the name and the memory, and he turns briefly. Yes, I have. I engaged her in combat previously. I had her within just a grasp of her destruction. I was this close, and he holds up his fingers together. I was so near to my deserved vengeance. He grits his teeth briefly before regaining his composure. This planned ambush, it must succeed. It cannot fail. I will be undone if it is not successful.
Please believe me when I say that Lord Hardestadt would desire nothing more than to see the destruction of Lady Jadwiga. And I wish to see my lord pleased in his aims. If there is any way I can help you in the destruction of Jadwiga, please let me know. I will do everything I can.
Do you know of anything of her that I might not know?
Well, I know that she is a Bohemian noble. She is fairly local to this area. She may even have levies of some kind, footmen and soldiers. I know not of such matters. I do not know how wealthy she is or how many lands she owns, but I do know that she has been seen in this castle before. You know this, don't you?
No. He raises his eyebrows. I did not know of this.
Well, Rodrigo trails off, though he seems to be fully in your confidence, so he continues. I saw her having meetings with Lord Hardestadt shortly before the other founders arrived. Not long before we arrived here in Castle Deverick. They were having a conference of some kind, some sort of council, before she departed from the castle. But ever since then, he seems only to desire her destruction. I assume she betrayed him in some way. I do not know.
Is it common knowledge that Jadwiga was here, or was this a private secret that only you were privy to?
Oh, no, my lord. Please do not speak of this to any of the other founders. They are unaware of my lord's private matters. I shouldn't have said anything. Please, I beg you, do not speak of this to anyone.
I promise I will not. You have nothing... He pauses for a second, thinking about Hardestadt and Jadwiga and what this could possibly mean. I will not betray you. He finishes.
Rodrigo looks relieved. Thank you, my lord. I fear I would lose much more than an arm if this knowledge were to get to Lord Hardestadt. I rarely speak of his matters. I only assume you knew them as well.
It's valuable information, and I appreciate your honesty and speaking candidly.
Well, thank you, my lord. He bows at the waist. This cask is fairly full. You please feel free to help yourself to it. And he pats the small keg before turning to very quickly move from the room. You can see a certain nervousness in his stride, and you can see that Rodrigo is eager to be away from here, as clearly he feels he said too much.
Well, thank you again for introducing me to this cask. And he puts a hand on top of the wooden barrel as if it's a friend.
Yes, of course. Drink all you like. Enjoy, my lord. And Rodrigo ducks from the room, disappearing into the tunnels.
Valentino drinks his fill as he ponders these new developments.
And with that, we're going to fade out as we end that particular scene. We're going to return to the hallway where Julieta and Diego and Gehrman are remaining, waiting to be summoned by Lord Hardestadt as plans confer between he and Mistress Van Shawn. So the camera is going to focus in on the three of them to see if they're going to simply remain waiting or set about their own agendas in the castle.
Julieta eventually kind of can't hold back her impatientness in this situation and immediately says, "Good God, how long are they going to allow us to wait out here?"
Forever, if they wish it. It's not as though we have pressing business anyway.
Well, some of us don't, anyway.
And what is Gehrman doing?
Gehrman's just sitting on the floor with his arms crossed, his knees bent, as he listens to the two of them. Some of us. He looks over to Julieta. What do you have to do?
Never you mind, churchman. It's none of your concern.
He smiles and kind of chuckles.
Well, Julieta, are you already starting to play the game like Valentino does?
Julieta kind of looks over to Diego and somewhat of a small little grin kind of tugs at the side of her lips, even through the annoyance of having to wait here. And she speaks up. "Oh, Diego. I do believe I was playing the game far before this happened upon us."
Ah, well, and he waves his hand in sort of a dismissive gesture. I never did like politics.
Alright, so you guys mean to wait there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and after a time, perhaps 10 minutes or so, maybe even 15, you hear footsteps down the hallway, and should it draw your attention, you'll look up to see Valentino emerging back into the hallway where you've been waiting. His color looks much better, you see now.
Valentino definitely walks in with more of a spring in his step. Maybe not necessarily a smile, but definitely confidence and energy he's been lacking for nights now.
Mucho mejor, Diego says, looking at you up and down, Diego. Valentino.
Valentino nods and gives Diego a slight smile.
Julieta looks over to Valentino as well and kind of looks him up and down. Feeling better, Casanova?
Much, thank you. Gives a wider smile.
Well, for our part, we're still waiting. Not a peep from inside.
And almost as if on cue, one of the servitors of Mistress Fanchon, a Cainite draped in deep purple robes, emerges from the War Council and smiles his eerie grin at the four of you.
The lords and Mistress Fanchon wish to meet with you inside, young Cainites.
Valentino looks around his companions, nods at this Cainite, and walks towards the war room.
The Tremere bows, pointing his spindly fingers in that direction.
Julieta hurries behind Valentino, even perhaps pushing past Diego and Gehrman to get through the door. She's obviously ready to get this settled.
Gehrman will stand, slowly, kind of adjusting himself as he readies himself to enter the door. And as he moves forward, he'll kind of turn to the servant, kind of looking him up and down with a grimaced lip. Something about this man is off-putting. But then he'll turn and move into the war room.
Mistress Fanchon's servant looks at you with an eerie smile, his eyes glittering in the firelight of the hallway. So have all four of you entered the room?
Yes, Diego follows as well, but he says to the servant in passing, "Purple is not a good color for you, my friend. It makes it look like you're up to something."
This he actually scowls at. And as the four of you enter the room, I'll switch scene. Ah, there you are, Lord Hardestadt says as the four of you enter the war room. It has been decided. We are to set upon the anathema and all of his traitorous get at the monastery of St. Timothy. Mistress Fanchon has divined from Sire Venceslas when the attack is to take place. It is within 6 nights from now. Claudius Giovanni has plans in motion that Sire Venceslas, sadly, knows nothing of. Are you certain you cannot pry more from his flesh, Fanchon? Hardestadt turns to look sidelong at the Tremere mistress, who simpers regrettably.
I am afraid not, Lord Hardestadt. I have plied my every ritual upon his body. If he had more secrets, my apprentices would have pulled them handily from him.
Hardestadt scowls. Very well. The plan is to remain in a small cave that is beneath the monastery of St. Timothy. There is a acropolis there, where the monks bury some of their dead. We will advance to the monastery of St. Timothy and await there 6 nights hence. When the attack on Japheth takes place, for there is to be a meeting between Claudius, Giovanni, and Japheth at this time, we will be ready. The garden, and at this, Hardestadt moves another map, and you see, if some of you are looking at the maps in front of him, you can see it's actually of the monastery itself. The monastery's inner garden, and he points with a gauntleted hand to the map, is surprisingly large for a courtyard sanctuary of their fashion. Shielded from the elements, it lies cradled between the monastery's high walls and 3 large upthrusting rocks on its north side, and he points to the north. The monks there believe these rocks are a sign that this spot is blessed. They call them the Trinity. The garden is surrounded on 3 sides by gray stone walls as well, and he moves to the western and eastern and southern sides. Only the rock formations delineate its northernmost side. That winding wall includes several hidden grottos, as I said, an acropolis, a small cavern complex, and a natural spring. The monks have collected a number of thorn and spine-covered plants, planting them in the garden to remind them of the pain all people must suffer before they can reach the perfection of God's eternal embrace, or some such nonsense. Roses also cover the garden's grounds, but that is irrelevant. The garden's largest grotto is cradled gently by a semicircle of rock. The monks chipped away at the rough stone for centuries until they had carved benches and seats into the rock face. We believe this is where the meeting between the leaders of Clan Cappadocius and the Giovanni will take place, on those seats. 3 rocky seats stand out as particularly impressive. For some reason, the clan seems to embrace the idea of the Trinity, the Holy Three. Did you see any themes of 3 in the monastery of St. Timothy during your visit? And Hardestadt glances up at the 4 of you.
Yes, the 3 seats we presented to with Japheth on the right. I believe it was intended that the Cappadocius soldier himself sat at the center and perhaps Claudius at the left, but he never was there.
I see. Claudius, little worm that he is, would not be seated in that chair. His father, Augustus Giovanni, would be. What know you of Augustus Giovanni?
Precious little, I'm afraid.
Suffice it to say, he is the patriarch of the Giovanni family, the head of their little bloodline. He was the first to be brought into Clan Cappadocius by Cappadocius himself. The Cappadocians, they have little regard for the Giovanni, but among them Augustus is one of the right hand of Cappadocius. I know little of the politics taking place between the Cappadocians, only to say that the one who Augustus replaced is no longer in favor of his sire. Cappadocius has taken Augustus to his bosom, and embraced, therefore, all the other necromancers. Augustus is the sire, the word Claudius, and a most fearsome necromancer, young whelp though he may be. We have reason to believe he will also be present at this ambush, likely the source of Claudius's arrogance and confidence. With his father watching over him, it will be a fight indeed. But we have the edge. Hardestadt smiles and points to the northernmost area where the 3 stones are. This is where the grotto is. We will hide within here and wait. When the moment is right, we will strike. We outnumber them 3-1. And it should be a little matter to clear up this little plot. Once foiled, Clan Cappadocian will owe its eternal gratitude to the Camarilla. And it will be undeniable proof that nascent anarchs must be crushed in their place. If we fail, Hardestadt shakes his head. I cannot even counsel such notions. The camera pans back to the four of you to see how you're taking this in.
We will not fail, my lord. We cannot.
Gammon eyes the map back and forth, slightly leaning on the table as he does so. How many forces will we have to hide in that grotto? Small, yes?
I will not be bringing any of my mortal levies in the monastery. That would be far too obvious. And they would not be able to hide from the senses of the vampires there. But we will be present. I will be there in the grotto along with Milov Petrenkov, Clan Gangrel, Adonis Sforza will be there as well, and also Joseph von Baren. Camilla Baines and Mistress Fanchon are not given to violent confrontation, and they will better serve us from a distance. Rafael de Corazon also has business elsewhere. He will not be able to attend this battle. Hardestadt says that with some measure of disdain, you notice. So it will be I, Adana de Sforza, Milov, and Joseph, along with the four of you. We will be 8 to their 2. I will also have my mortal levies ready on the outskirts of the monastery, camped out, hidden in the woods. At my signal, Joseph will be able to summon them at a moment's notice.
What are we looking for?
We are looking for Claudius and his attempt upon Japheth's life. I do not know if Augustus is part of this conspiracy, but I have no doubt and would not be surprised if he was. If Augustus joins the fray, we will have to put him down as well. Augustus is a very, very potent Cainite, young ones. Do not confront him directly. He is the child of the antediluvian. Leave him to us.
Valentino speaks up. Japheth provided Gehrman and I these 2 shrouds. He seemed to believe they would help, though I cannot imagine how. Do you have any knowledge of what they possibly could symbolize or be of significance?
Shrouds. Hardestadt narrows his eyes, but Mistress Fanchon looks very interested indeed as her eyes dart up.
Might I examine these shrouds?
I was asking Lord Hardestadt, my lady.
Her eyes narrow hatefully at you, and you see the fury cross her face before Hardestadt smirks. Already taking advantage of your blood, eh, boy? I know not of what shrouds Japheth may have bestowed upon you. No doubt they are power. They have some magical power in nature about them. Japheth is a very old and potent Cainite. I have no doubt he has many treasures stowed away in that monastery.
Valentino nods quietly, eyeing Miss Fanchon briefly.
She's staring at you. She's like standing there staring at you, and you can't help but feel it like a chill run over your skin as the weight of her gaze like bores through you. Very well. This plan will have to suffice. I have time for a question or 2 from you, but otherwise, I expect the 4 of you there within 6 nights' time.
Of course, my lord.
Hardestadt seems to be distracted for a moment, although the 4 of you, each of you know that you would have time to interject a question or 2 before you're dismissed.
Julieta, she lets the others go about their inquiries to Hardestadt before eventually speaking up. Her eyes level with his own, and she says, "If we succeed in this mission, what will happen with us? Will we be free?"
You'll have the favor of one of the most powerful organizations in Europe. You'll have my blessing, which goes a long way in this continent. And you will also be free, of your ignominious beginnings. I will absolve you of your illegal births, and you will be permitted to go about your agendas, whatever they may be. Or walk into the sun, for all I care. Alright, so is that it, or is everyone going to remain silent?
Valentino falls silent, awaiting to be dismissed.
Diego's just been nodding his head silently, in assent.
Gammon will push off from the War Council, from the table, as he backs away from the table, crossing his arms and nods at Hardestadt.
Good. Hardestadt nods and seems satisfied. With my forces trapping them within the monastery, and our presence within, we will crush them in a grand enfilade. We will envelop this conspiracy and destroy it root and stem. I know not what preparations the necromancer has made, but they cannot be better than this. Very well. The four of you are dismissed. You have roughly a week's time before I expect you to be gathered at the monastery of St. Timothy. Do what you will. Go where you must, I care not. But always respect the Masquerade. We do not wish the Church's attention to fall upon us. And with that, Hardestadt dismisses the four of you with a wave of his hand, folding up the maps on the table.
Valentino bows and exits.
Gammon nods and does a slight bow as he follows after Valentino.
Diego shortly on their heels.
Julieta, as the others are leaving, she kind of eyes the place where Raphael had been sitting. But of course he is there no longer, and she somewhat wonders what he is up to, why he is not aiding them in this mission. She knows that he can read minds, and she is somewhat hesitant of this, but she eventually looks over to Hardestadt one last time, and then eventually turns and follows the others.
All right, and with that, we are going to switch our scene just outside the war room. So the camera focuses in on the four young Cainites as they emerge after their conference with Lord Hardestadt, now apprised of the plan of action that has been put into place. And as the four of you are left with the knowledge that for perhaps the first time since your embrace, you have a bit of free time, a little more leash, as it were, to your collar, to move about. 6 days, 6 nights. What to do with them. It is slowly dawning upon the four of you that you have this time all to yourself, and yet can't shake the notion that some great confrontation is to take place at that monastery, but how to prepare for it. I'm going to turn the scene over to the four of you now.
Julieta is probably the first to speak up as they exit the war room, and she looks over to the others. Where do you think Raphael went? She asks rather curiously.
Perhaps to Belgrade to attend to the Masquerade situation.
Julieta immediately looks back over to Valentino, and somewhat of anger kind of rips across her eyes, but she says nothing, and actually she looks over to Gehrman to see what he might say.
Gehrman's eyes kind of flash at Valentino. Attend the ball ground. What do you mean?
Just what I said before, Prior. Outside.
Gehrman's face kind of contorts in what appears to be anger and worry all in the same time.
They won't want a K-Knight in the hands of a mortal. I can understand how that would be. Perhaps it would be for the best after all. Your sire can meet his final end.
He has met his final end. He is lost in the hands of the Lord.
You know as well as I do that the blood that runs through our veins, as it has been given to others, such as Rodrigo, changes people. Who's to say Vlad Tepes is not under Marquetta's control, now that he's been fed his blood? It's a dangerous unknown.
But one I'm afraid we have to deal with.
And they seem capable. Yes? As he kind of nods for reassurance.
I have to hope so. I would not like to see Marquetas on that battlefield in 6 nights.
Well, speaking of the battlefield, Diego says, and he looks a bit angry now. It seems I'm not going to be able to escape violence after all. So maybe, perhaps, if you are still willing, I'll take you up on your offer, Gehrman. Teach me how to hold a sword.
Gehrman looks to Diego and nods solemnly. Of course.
He bows. Most kind of you.
All right, so with that, we're going to fade out. I'm going to end that scene. We're going to start our break a little early today because of the next segment that is coming up in the story, and we're approaching noon. So we're going to take 10 minutes to gather ourselves, and then we'll get back into it.
Cool.
Sounds
Super.
good.
Quick question.
Sure.
In 6 days, if he's going to teach him how to hold a sword, would that be enough for me to buy, like, a point of melee? Just one?
We'll talk about that over Skype.
Okay.
Alright, I'm back. Who's plotting my demise?
What?
Who's talking about me? Who's plotting my demise?
What? I mean, nothing.
I knew it. You're dead.
I'm back.
Well,
Oh god. I really hope Raphael isn't going over to Dracula's house.
That would suck.
I would be so mad.
he may not come back.
I would be so mad.
Maybe I'll learn some melee. Let's see.
It's possible.
Since otherwise we'll just keep running in all these fights and I'll just continue to sorority girl slap them.
Sorority gore slaps.
Oh, get away! Oh!
All right, I'm back. So, boys want to get together and learn some fisticuffs.
It's gonna. I don't know. We'll see.
Diego totally pick it up. Will mine be the first experience expenditure of the game?
Well, and that's kind of what we were talking about. Basically, Gehrman is, because Valentino, Vukar has expressed an interest in Valentino learning this as well, taking part in these lessons, assuming Gehrman would teach him, right, Daniel?
Yeah.
Okay, so he'd teach Valentino as well? Okay. Well, yeah. Basically, Gehrman is going to be doing a charisma leadership role. Difficulty is going to be 10 minus his melee score to teach the two of you. Each role is going to represent one night spent in lessons. With enough successes, your character can learn the basics of swordsmanship, and it will be experience-free. But you have to succeed at the role, and you have to spend precious time leading up to this confrontation to do it. That's where the trade-off is.
Come on, Gehrman.
Yeah, not a great roll.
We're just not the best students is all.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You guys.
Valentino keeps questioning your methods, and Diego keeps tripping over his feet. It's just a mess.
All right. So, with that, unless anybody has anything else to do, we can get back into it.
Heck yeah.
Sam's ready to go.
Okay, you have something else to do, or?
Heck yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Come on, lucky dice.
All right. So, we'll get back into it. Okay, so with the end of that scene, we're going to pan the game back a little bit and go into a little bit of a more advanced time frame. And we're going to generally cover what happens a week. And if we need to go into a scene, which is very possible, we can go into a roleplay scene throughout the week. We'll do that, and we'll cover what happens. So the first thing to do is to go around, kind of round robin, and decide what your characters are going to be doing throughout the week. You guys have 6 days, 6 nights, as it were, to take actions and maybe even travel and go to different places, talk to different characters, to seek out people that you might want to speak to, other characters you've met during the course of the story. This is your opportunity to do that. You're not under anybody's, immediate thumb to get something done the way you have been up until now. So it's your time. You can spend it however you want. If you're not sure of what to do, or like you, the player, are having trouble putting the clues together, putting the pieces together, I will permit you mental rolls, intelligence, enigmas, or intelligence investigation, something to get you started as to what might help you in your situation or what you can do. Because remember, guys, it's not just the player. Like, you can use your mental stats and you can make mental rolls, and I am obligated to give you information based on the successes of those rolls. Mental stats are very, very useful. So you guys can take advantage of that if you don't know in what direction your character should be going. So if you're just looking for something to do, let me know. But we're going to start with, let's start with Julieta, since Diego and Gehrman and Valentino kind of have already made plans, at least for the first few nights. Julieta, where... Let's go ahead and focus in on you and what Julieta is going to be doing in the coming week.
Well, the first thing Julieta will do, maybe not that night after they leave the war room, but perhaps the next night. Is she free to leave?
Oh yeah, she's free to leave the castle.
Right. She's going to actually compose a letter to Vlad, warning him about Raphael. Just to be on the lookout for the significant Cainite, because she just has this feeling that he might be that might be what his business is that Hardestadt was speaking of, and she's a little bit paranoid about it, so she is going to write that letter, and she's not going to give it to any of the messengers within the confines of the castle. She's actually going to seek out a messenger probably elsewhere, like some village nearby, something. She doesn't trust anyone in that castle, and she can't let anyone know what she's done. So
okay, looking at the map of Transylvania, where do you mean to head?
Let's see. Where is the castle where we are? Is it near kind of like, it's on the other side of the river, right?
Yeah, you are actually on the north bank of the Morasul River, and if you look at the map of Transylvania in your journal, you'll see the Morasul where it cuts through out of the west and into the middle of the Transylvania. Even though Castle Deverick is not marked on this map, it is like at the second bend on the northern bank of the Morasul River, so kind of right there in those foothills.
I mean, is there any little villages that wouldn't be named on here? Because these are all, I feel like these are all major.
Well, yeah, they're major towns and even cities, but the thing is no one is going to be able to write in some of the smaller villages. Like, you're not going to find what you're looking for there.
Well, no, I would write the letter. I just need someone to send it.
Oh, okay. So you need...
deliver it, but not within the castle, because she doesn't trust any of those people.
Okay, so you need someone to travel to...
A messenger, yeah.
Okay.
We'll get the letter to.
To Lord Impaler's castle.
Yes.
Okay. So all you have to do now is convince one of the locals to take a letter to Lord Vlad the Impaler.
Alrighty.
All right. So go ahead and describe how you're going about this.
Well, Julietta, she emerges from the castle, and she's going to take the dirt road, and she's going to try and find a local, like you said.
Okay, first of all, where are you composing the letter?
In her, where she was granted rest at the castle.
Okay, there's no parchment down there. There's no writing material, so you'd have to go around the castle to find it.
Well, she's going to search the castle for where people would compose letters, I suppose.
Okay.
A study or something.
Okay, make a perception investigation roll. Difficulty's gonna be 6.
Okay. Perception what?
Investigation. All right, you easily uncover a study where you have all the writing utensils you need, and you also see there's wax to seal the letter and basically everything you need. Although the seal on the letter is going to be, if you choose to seal it, it's going to be of the Deverick family. I'm not sure if you would like to do that, but that's what the seal means.
Julietta uses the seal after she's composed her letter to Vlad.
Okay. So you have in hand your letter, and it took you a few hours to do all this.
Once the letter is sealed, she would slip it into the confines of her skirts. And she stands heading for the door, and she eyes the hallway. And she does exit. She doesn't want to appear to be doing something out of the ordinary, so she exits the room and makes her way down the hall.
Okay. So you can leave the castle at any time.
While she does so, she exits the castle, and she is going to make her way down the road, hoping to chance upon a small grouping of locals or just anyone, I guess.
Okay. So you're just going to set off down the road and look for a village?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead and make your wits survival to see if you can navigate the land and find what you're looking for. You're not a native to the area and you don't speak the language, so it's going to be harder. One roll will represent, we'll say 8 hours of wandering around looking. No, that's a little harsh. 4 hours. Yeah, go ahead and make your wits. No. Yeah, wits survival. Difficulty is going to be 8. All right, go ahead and describe Julietta's search over the next 4 hours.
She continues to walk down the most prominent road, obviously, that led to the castle, and every now and again she kind of looks here and there, trying to spy any type of maybe small gathering of people off the sides of the roads or things of that nature. But she doesn't come upon anything, and she gets a little bit discouraged.
All right, what does she do from here?
Approximately what time is it? It's been 4 hours, so...
Yeah, and it took you a few hours to write the letter, so it's probably about 4 hours away from dawn.
She'll definitely have to return back then, because she doesn't want to get caught in the sunlight.
Okay, and you return. I mean, you managed to find your way back to Castle Deverick. It's fairly obvious, and you have enough time to get back. Your first night ends as you sleep. Go ahead and reduce your blood point by 1, or your blood pool by 1 as you rise for the next night, as we are now on night 2 with Julietta. What does Julietta intend to do from here?
Well, she really does need to get this letter to Vlad. She is going to... she doesn't want to risk going out again. And the pressure to get this letter to him is greater than her resistance to maybe find someone in the castle. So she bends in that regard, and she's going to head down to she's going to head to the gates of the castle, kind of on the obviously the outskirts, and she's going to try and see if someone will be able to get the letter out, a messenger.
Okay. So how does she approach them?
She heads out of the castle and makes her way down to the gate area, where there obviously are probably guards posted. She's going to probably... No, she is going to approach them.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'll remind you that if you're at a loss as to what to do or where to go, like I said, you can always make mental rolls, and I'm obligated to give you information.
Okay, I mean, we can try that.
Okay. If you're unsure of where to go from here, you can make an intelligence enigmas or intelligence investigation roll, difficulty 6.
Okay. All right.
All right, I'll relay the results of that. All right, there you go.
Julieta kind of pauses at the doors which exit the castle, and she kind of looks off at the guards. And it is dawning on her that there really isn't anyone in this castle that she can trust. She knows that even if she goes to the guards, they'll report back to Hardestadt. All of these people are loyal. Ghouls and mortals alike, they're all loyal to him. So she kind of looks down at her skirts, knowing the letter's in there, and as much as she wants to warn Vlad that perhaps Raphael might be coming his way, she's not even quite sure if the letter would even make it there now before Raphael got there. If that is what he planned, if that is what the Cainite is doing. So she weighs the pros and cons and realizes that it's just not worth it. So she would probably head back into the manor, into the castle, and she's going to try and find a hearth where the fire's burning, and she's going to burn the letter.
All right, and as the flames engulf the letter, you contemplate the nights to come. You have five nights remaining to you, Julieta, before you can go about this plan that's been put into place, this ambush.
Well, now that she knows that plan is kind of shot, she kind of refocuses her attention on what's ahead. And she does know that the others are training with Gehrman to try and get more stronger and more, learn how to use a sword and whatnot. And she realizes that she probably should be trying to learn maybe her abilities a little more. She knows that she has abilities. She doesn't know what they are, though, and how to kind of hone in on them. And as much as she hates the idea, she knows the only person in this castle who would be able to help her is Camilla. And it really, when she's thinking about this, if anyone's near, they can see on her face, she is kind of like, oh God, she doesn't want to have to go to this woman. She's completely nuts, but she's the only one who can even maybe remotely help her. So she's going to seek out Camilla Baines.
All right, and why is she seeking out Camilla Baines?
She's gonna see if Camilla can help her use what abilities she has and explain to her what the abilities are. She doesn't even know what they are. These powers she has.
Okay. So there's really no need to engage in a scene for that. But Julieta, as you managed to find Camilla quite easily in the room where you left her, and is Julieta willing to endure her? Because Camilla is very difficult. You find that out very quickly. She, like I said, she alternates between extremely cruel and extremely motherly, sometimes on the turn of a dime. Do you think she would be able to handle that?
Yes, she knows from experience with her own sire that you have to you have to bend with these individuals. You have to kind of give them what it seems as though they are seeking. So in the times where she's motherly, she kind of indulges that, and when she becomes vicious with her, she is going to act as though she has done something wrong, and she becomes very apologetic, just in order to try and get some semblance of information from this woman in terms of these abilities that her clan has.
All right. So as you try to endure the vicissitudes of Camilla Bane's company, go ahead and make your willpower roll, difficulty 6, to see if you can endure this. Unfortunately, Camilla turns out to be insufferable in her company. You do your best to try and please her, but nothing seems to make her happy, and she tries to explain to you what your abilities mean, and yet she's hardly helpful at all in describing this. As she seems to say one thing and then she'll say another thing that contradicts herself, and then she'll act like it's your fault. And you find yourself after the first few hours getting really nowhere with her. Try though you might to glean some information from her. Camilla truly is a complete lunatic, and it is very difficult for you to stand her company, much less glean any sort of genuine information from her. However, as you do try to suffer her company, you do get one little tidbit from her, which she will say to you, which I'll relay to you over Skype. All right, so I've relayed what she said to you. And actually, that'll be the end of your second night trying to endure Camilla Baines. So while you read that and contemplate that, we're going to switch over to Diego and I assume Gehrman and Valentino as well, as they engage in lessons. So first of all, let's describe where Gehrman intends to conduct these lessons, and how he intends to go about it, and how he intends to instruct his students.
Gehrman's gonna escort them out with plenty of extra swords and some armor, out to a kind of spacious courtyard where they have enough room to move. And then he'll hand them both what seems to just be a regular longsword. And then he's going to instruct them the way that he was instructed. Quick one-on-ones and discussing form and movement and footwork. Kind of the basics of how a swordsman needs to move to keep his balance, and so that he is even able to swing a sword.
All right, and how is Diego addressing these lessons? How is he handling this?
He is basically taking it on as a challenge, meaning he throws himself at it with full force. He knows that if he doesn't learn how to hold a weapon properly, then eventually one of these random sets of knights or whatever they fall upon in the forest are going to kill him.
All right, and how is Valentino addressing this new lesson, this opportunity with this hardened crusader?
Valentina's very eager, and interested in learning all he can in the next 6 nights, guided seemingly by the expressed desire to once more stab his sire and defeat her in combat. So he's very driven.
All right, Gehrman, go ahead and make your charisma leadership roll. Difficulty will be 10 minus your melee.
And these are public.
Yeah, because they can publicly see how good you are in the lessons.
Okay.
You actually make some headway into teaching them. Go ahead and describe it.
As they're holding the swords and doing the motions that Gehrman is instructing them, he's kind of walking and pacing back and forth, watching their movements and their footsteps. And whenever they step out of line, Gehrman takes the blunt edge of his sword and kind of like slaps at their knee, like to get back, to move that back. Constantly reminding them, when you're moving, you're not moving your legs, you're moving your movement, right? Your weight. You have to center your weight. And then he shows them like basic strikes, and then begins to show them how to parry and block, and it seems to be taking a little, and he's pleased.
All right, how's Diego responding to these drills?
He's seeing them as a necessary evil. I mean, he's rather disciplined, having received not 1 but 2 diplomas in Spain. So he knows how much he has to throw himself into learning in order to make it stick, so to speak. And he is no stranger to being corrected, so he doesn't even show any sign of irritation.
How about Valentino?
Valentino is eager to learn. He gets frustrated occasionally when he feels that he knows he is capable of more, having already slain a good number of people. So he feels a little arrogant, like he should know more than what is being taught, and some of the lessons seem simple to him. But he appreciates that Gehrman is more experienced, so he defers his judgment over time.
And they do seem a little resistant, particularly Valentino, Gehrman, but you do see definite improvement after only just 8 hours. And it's interesting being a K-Knight and teaching K-Knights. When you were running drills with men in the Crusades, there was always the need for rest. There was always the need for recovery. And yet, your undead forms can move all throughout the night. You never tire. You never have need of rest or water or food or any of those mortal limitations. You can practice the whole night, and indeed you do. The 3 of you moving in unison with Gehrman's drills until the sky, almost without noticing, the sky begins to turn pink with dawn, and you are forced to retreat into the castle to quit your lessons. It's almost as if you're able to cram much more training into a single night than you might have otherwise under other circumstances with mortal men. So as you retire for the first night and advance into the second night, go ahead and describe Gehrman's intended lesson for the second night.
The second night, he's going to be pairing off with them as if they were fighting an attacker, and he's gonna play the attacker, and he's gonna come at them slowly at first, but then picking up speed as if it were a real battle, stopping short every time he gets an opportunity to strike them, as if it were a lesson.
All right, go ahead and roll your charisma leadership minus your melee in difficulty. Okay. You actually continue to make steady progress in your lessons. Go ahead and describe it.
As he's attacking, he's noticing that they're backing up a lot, and that's causing them to cross their feet. So Gehrman quickly readies, can see that. So he instructs them to only back up when is absolutely necessary, but to constantly push forward and to never cross your feet, as to keep your opponent from pushing you off balance. So he's corrected that in them, and they seem to be able to hold their own in their own small little melees as they pair off.
So Valentino, you're proving to be a promising student. Go ahead and describe how that is.
Valentino, while sparring with Gehrman, feels, especially when the fights become more fast-paced, he feels this energy that he never had in life in his breathing days, and he feels it's the beast, and he has to actively combat the impulse that the beast has for him to go full on in attack, and he's learning in these sparring matches to control that and to heed the words and the lessons that Gehrman is teaching him without letting this beast just out into the open.
Diego, you're actually learning something. I mean, Gehrman is a gruff individual, and he's not much for words, but it's surprising to you that you feel actually more confident in your abilities with a sword. Go ahead and describe this progress.
Well, Diego was always a very healthy man in life, and now in death he feels that he can push himself well beyond the limits of anything that he could ever do in his breathing. And he throws himself into it to such a degree that he almost has to hold himself back or become too overzealous, knowing that Gehrman could take it if he were to go a little too far. He still holds back and revels in the excitement of knowing how to swing a sword like a man now.
All right, and as the night continues and you drill for endless hours and continue to fight and learn, and you have to take hits, you have to take falls, you find yourself being defeated by Gehrman over and over and over, and Gehrman is so skilled. The two of you see now the depth of his craft and how many years it must have taken for him to learn this, and you find out that swordsmanship is much more than simply swinging a sword at an enemy. It's almost an art like unto itself, because you have to anticipate your enemy. You have to find openings. You have to. It's as much a mental thing as it is a physical one. And you also find out how woefully inadequate you are at it, as Gehrman defeats you over and over and over handily. It's a blow to your pride, but you do feel you're getting better. And as the second night ends, we're going to switch to Julieta, who is going to be rising for the third night. And by the way, everyone, Gehrman, Diego, Valentino, go ahead and reduce your blood pool each by 2 points over the next 2 nights, because you've been practicing. You haven't had time to feed. Julieta, we go to you now. Go ahead and reduce your blood pool by another point as you rise for the second night. And as you rise for the second night, you see you've glimpsed the other three out in the courtyard. Gehrman drilling Diego and Valentino, running through these practice routines as they try to learn the art of swordsmanship and the art of fighting. Go ahead and describe Julieta as we find her on the third night.
Julieta, she sees that the men are training, and she keeps thinking over in her mind what Camilla had said to her before she had ended their encounter with one another. And it's quite clear what she meant and what she said, and she ponders for a moment. Did everyone grab one of those cloaks at the monastery?
No, it was only Gehrman and Valentino, I believe. Yeah. The others were offered to Diego and you, but you didn't take them.
So Diego didn't take one?
And neither did you.
Right. So she's kind of pondering this in her head. She decides that how far away is the monastery? Like, is it a night's travel?
Yeah, it's a night's travel. You can get there in a night.
She needs to go there and see if Japheth will give her a cloak, and maybe perhaps provide one for Diego too. She could grab one for him. So she's going to first go down to the caskets and drink. She wants to be sure she has enough blood.
And as Hardestadt's men are canvassing the countryside for human beings to regularly drag back to the castle and drain of their blood, you do manage to drink from the casks down in the castle. Do you mean to drink to your fill?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and make a humanity roll. Or no, a conscience roll. Difficulty 8.
Okay. Let's see.
And of course, conscience rolls are private because it's mental. All right, go ahead and describe Julieta as she prepares to leave, as she feeds and prepares to leave the castle.
Julieta takes a few sips from a goblet that was provided to her, and she does feel this gnawing kind of guilt drinking the blood. She did hear the victims being pulled into the castle before she was heading down to the casks, and she feels this like sudden guilt, and it's quite bothersome to her. But she tries her best to push through it and at least finish that one goblet before placing it down on a side table and exiting the room. And she's actually going to head towards her comrades because she wants to let them know that she's going to head out.
All right, and as Julieta emerges into the courtyard, As Gehrman is running the drills, Julietta emerges into the courtyard of Castle Devrick. What does she see when she emerges into this scene, Gehrman? As you've just begun your third night of training.
On the third night, Gehrman has provided both Valentino himself and Diego a shield. For he learned when he was in the Crusades for young crusaders to always wield a shield, for they need to live long enough to become skilled. So he feels them, now that they grasp basic swordplay, that they need to learn how to fight with a shield to better enhance their ability in combat. And as Julietta waltzes and comes into the courtyard, she sees Gehrman and Valentino fighting, with Diego off to the side observing them. As they clash swords and the ringing of steel echoes throughout the courtyard, Gehrman swings his sword wide and pulls Valentino's sword off to bash him with the shield and kind of push him back. Keep your shield up!
Ugh. Valentino nearly falls to the floor, reaching for his shield and getting back up to his feet, looking a little frustrated.
With the presence of Julietta, Gehrman kind of winds around and looks at her. Looking to learn, as he kind of opens up a sword and a shield.
Julietta meets Gehrman's gaze, and she kind of gives him somewhat of a soft smile. I think I'll pass for tonight, Churchman.
What brings you out here?
As he asks this question, she kind of eyes the others and looks down at the ground for a moment before looking back up, and then over to Diego. Diego, when we were at the monastery, I know I did not grab one of those cloaks that Japheth had given to us. You have not either, right?
That is correct, he says with a nod.
Well, I do think we should have grabbed them. I'm thinking, she looks over to the other two now, I think I need to go back and get one for myself and Diego, just in case.
Gehrman looks to the other two hastily as he returns his gaze to Julietta. I would not advise that. The roads are dangerous.
Why are they so important now?
Well, I met with Camilla Baines. I was trying to see if I could learn anything from her. And though that seemed rather fleeting towards the end, she did say something to me about robes and boots. It was rather vague in nature and rather crazy as well, but I think she knows something.
Very well. If you feel that's important.
And this revelation actually causes the three of you to stop your training for a moment and consider what she said.
Well, very well. If you think it's important. He kind of nods approvingly.
I would advise against it. As he looks back to Julietta. We ran across that century of knights the last time. We barely escaped. Not to mention all of the dangers that Giovanni presses. If you were to give away our position of our ambush, and lead him to suspect that you and I and Hardestadt know of the cathedral, Our element of surprise would be lost.
Valentino interjects. Perhaps Rodrigo could take you.
Julieta ponders on this a moment. Well, I do not want to risk Diego and my life. I mean, it seemed urgent. It seemed we need those cloaks and those boots. And what if we cannot trust Rodrigo?
Do you distrust everyone these nights? Rodrigo seeks to help us.
He is loyal to Hardestadt.
Hardestadt's goal is the destruction of Claudius and Jadwiga, just as it is ours.
Tell you what, as Gehrman kind of steps forward with his shield and his sword, take mine. If you find something of need in it, bring it to our attention, and then we can discuss getting more robes for the rest of us.
Julieta kind of sighs a little bit. I do not even know if Camilla was telling the truth. But I don't want to risk it either. And how am I supposed to find out if these cloaks and the boots really will do anything? Perhaps it's all superstition.
Take them to Mr. Spanchon.
I do not trust her, not for a moment. She eyed me when I brought up the cloaks. I imagine she would see them claimed for herself, whatever their value.
Yes, I don't trust her either. Julieta.
Perhaps.
Yeah, she just doesn't trust her either, is what she said.
You mustn't forget that she's still loyal to Hardestadt.
If you were willing to travel to the St. Timothy Cathedral, you must be willing to travel upstairs. Just for a moment, to see if there is any truth behind Camilla.
What, and hand these cloaks over to Lady Fanchon?
Ha! Never. Her and her minion, as he remembers the man in the purple robe. I don't trust them either.
Wait, Diego says, suddenly seeming to think of something. What about Durgasin?
She's been gone for some time. Been meaning to ask Hardestadt where she's been.
She seems to be a neutral faction in all of this. If anyone's safe to take the ropes to, it would be her.
Agree.
Well, where are we to find her?
Probably sitting on a stump, allowing the crows to pick at her eyes. I don't know.
Gehrman kind of chuckles at this. That is for you to find. As he turns back to the other two. Lift your shields. Diego, you're next. As if Gehrman is to continue the lesson.
Julieta, she kind of gives Gehrman somewhat of a nod and then looks over to Diego as he readies himself. And then eventually she would turn and make her way back into the castle. She's going to ask she's going to see if she can find she'll see if she can find her on her own at first.
So where are you going to search?
Every inch of the castle.
Okay. Do you tend to do this quickly, or do you want to take your time and spend the whole night?
Quickly.
Okay. Go ahead and make your wits investigation roll. It becomes, well, actually, I'll relay the results of you over Skype. All right.
Well, it does become apparent after her quick search that Durgason is just nowhere to be found, and Julieta grows tiresome of these antics. She does feel as though these cloaks and the boots are important, and though to Gehrman it seems as though it's rather reckless for her to travel to the monastery and retrieve these cloaks for her and Diego, she disagrees. And after some time, she heads to the front gates of the castle, and she's going to try and head to the monastery on her own. She does not converse with the other three or get their opinions on the matter. She's...
Do you leave on foot, or do you mean to ride?
Well, I know that we came back on foot and on horse, but I mean, technically, two of us were on foot, so it did probably take the whole night to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
She can't ride a horse, so logically, she's going to go on foot.
Okay. So you're going to leave the castle alone and head towards the monastery?
Yes, she grabs a kind of a weathered cloak that was provided to her just for cover, and she folds the hood over her dark curls before making her exit.
All right, so Julieta is going to be traveling to the monastery. For the rest of the third night, Julieta is going to be on the road heading towards the monastery of St. Timothy. We move back to Gehrman and Diego and Valentino. Actually, all three of you roll your wits alertness. Difficulty is going to be 9. All right, so we're going to get back into it and move along with the third night. Go ahead and describe, Gehrman, your lesson.
In the middle of the lesson, Gehrman is fighting, and he's fighting with Diego now. And as he's attacking, he kind of pushes back to let Diego advance and to see how he approaches his opponent. And as he does, he comes at him, and Gehrman raises his shield, and while he's deflecting Diego's blow, he looks off to the side, off through the courtyard, and he sees a cloaked Julieta leaving the castle. As he kind of pushes forward with his shield to get Diego off. Stop! He kind of moves over to Julieta and he points. She's leaving.
What, on foot? Without even Rodrigo's help?
She's mad.
Valentino sighs. She's going to be taken. Something's going to happen. I'm certain of this.
Alert Rodrigo. You send him. We can't afford getting any of Hardestadt or the others involved.
Valentino reluctantly nods and leaves the courtyard to find Rodrigo.
Pressed with thoughts of Julieta, Gehrman turns back to Diego. Again, come, as he raises his shield and prepares to at least continue the lesson with Diego.
All right, so Valentino, you locate Rodrigo fairly easily, and I assume you tell him of Julieta's leaving for the monastery?
Yes.
Okay. He thanks you and actually gets his coach ready to depart. And about an hour after Julieta leaves, he gets his coach together and exits Castle Deverick through the drawbridge, driving his horses to catch up to her. He doesn't mean to bring her back. You knew that right away, but he doesn't think she should go alone. And he's going after her to help her. You were able to shortly return to your lessons soon after.
I've sent Rodrigo. He's going to attempt to catch up with her, bring her there.
Good. At least, with his help, we'll know she'll get there safely. However that might play out.
I do not understand why she would not take his help to begin with.
We can't continue to protect her against foolishness.
Agreed. Focus on the task at hand.
And with that, the lessons continue. Go ahead and make your roll, Gehrman. The night actually continues to progress very well. The lessons are proving to be very fruitful, and you can see marked increase in your students' skills. Gehrman, go ahead and describe it.
As he begins to spar off one after the other, Valentino, then Diego, then back to Valentino, and so forth, all throughout the night, he can begin to see some aggression in them and some improvement in the way they're moving. They're no longer crossing their feet. They're beginning to plant themselves with their shields up, and it starts becoming a small but yet fearsome task to be able to disarm them and to get in and past their defenses. So he knows that he's steadily making good progress with each one of them.
Valentino, how is your form and how's your character improving?
Valentino, slowly but surely, he's no longer looking at his feet while he's moving. He's no longer trying to keep an eye on all of his limbs as he's fighting, starting to remember to keep his shield up, and overall it's starting to look a little bit more natural and feel a little bit more natural as he starts to get into a rhythm.
And how's Diego coming along in these lessons?
Diego is learning very hard, though with some difficulty to not think too much about what he's doing and let it sort of drift into a form of instinct. But when he drifts too far into instinct, he can feel that tug of the beast in the back of his mind.
All right. And with the successful lessons continuing at Castle Devrick, we're going to switch scene. Julieta, it's begun to rain about an hour after you leave Castle Devrick. The rain patters down from the sky overhead as thunder splits the air. And a peal of water begins pouring down, soaking your traveling cloak as you move along the road. The moonlight is your only companion as you journey along the mountain road of Transylvania, and you can see the rushing Morisul River just off the cliff of the roadside to your left, or to your right. To your left is the sheer cliff face of the Carpathian Mountains, which occasionally bends around the road to open up into small copses of trees. The trees are skeletal and sparsely adorned this time of year, and they loom menacingly nearby as you wander these woods and this road all on your own. Go ahead and describe Julieta as she travels through the rain.
Julieta kind of pauses a moment and lets her face look up to the sky, and she feels the raindrops on her skin, and she notices that it does feel so different than when she was mortal. And that kind of makes her sad for a silent second. But the rain doesn't bother her. She continues to move forward eventually, and allows her eyes to spread beyond and see if there's anything coming, or she keeps her senses about her as much as she can, considering the rain and the thunder. And though she begins to get drenched, it doesn't seem to really faze her. And she just keeps traipsing along, focusing her mind on getting to the monastery.
And as you continue traveling along the road, Julieta, you see you round a corner, you round a bend that's about 20 yards in length, and as you reach the end of that, you can see a new bend in the river, or the road, as the river rushes hundreds of feet below the cliff face. And you can see the water pouring off the road into the Morisul River and from the rain, and as the rain patters overhead, you see... Actually, I'm going to let you make a wits alertness roll, difficulty 7.
As she rounds one of the bends and looks forward, seeing that there's another bend coming ahead, something not from this world kind of hits her. It's like it's rather psychic in nature, and she immediately stops. She feels some sort of force, and it's alarming, and it seems as though dangerous. Something is around that corner, and it's not good. And she kind of freezes there for a moment. She doesn't move, but she tries to focus her attention on that bend to see if she can see anything coming. She knows it's there.
And as you wait and watch in the rain, you see very little in the dark. It would be difficult for you to pick out anything from this distance, at least not without enhancing your senses, as you know you're capable of doing.
She is going to, after a time, and she realizes she can't pick up anything right away, she's going to use her auspex.
All right, and as you sharpen your vision with your auspex, your eyes become much stronger than any human ever had before, than is ever even humanly possible. You sharpen your vampiric senses to the point where you can actually see 3 figures in the distance. 2 of them are wandering the edge of the woods, pacing rather like wolves, and the third is actually not moving at all. He is standing hidden in the copse of trees in the distance. You can't pick out their features. You don't know exactly who they are, but you do see the sigil of Claudius Giovanni upon their tabards.
Damn it. She mutters under her breath. She sees that it is in fact Claudius and his men, and she hesitantly starts to back away. I mean, she kind of looks about to see if there's any way she could maybe go around them.
I should ask you, are you sharpening your hearing as well as your vision?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear faintly from this distance. All 3 of them have heartbeats. They're not vampires.
She still steps back a little bit. She only can sense and hear 3 of them. She sees them, but it's just, she doesn't know, if there are any others out there. Maybe at a distance that she can't pick up on. So she's kind of torn right now. She really, really is adamant about getting those cloaks. I mean, what Camilla said to her is kind of burning through her mind, and she is very, very afraid. She regrets not taking one. And even though Gehrman said that she could have his, or bring it to someone who might be able to explain what the power is on these cloaks, that wasn't good enough for her. And she is very adamant about getting through to the monastery.
And in the midst of your thoughts, you hear behind you, perhaps 100 yards away, the clop of hooves and the rolling of wagon wheels. Your hearing sharpened as it is, you can hear very clearly the approach of someone 100 yards back in the direction of Castle Deverick, heading closer towards you.
Julieta eventually turns in her matted cloak, and her eyes kind of gaze down the road to this carriage that is nearing her. And she's going to step somewhat to the side, backing off the road to see who it is that's coming.
You immediately recognize Rodrigo's carriage as he is whipping his horses to urge them along much faster than he normally might. They're not moving at a trot. They're actually galloping forward. And it's hard. It would be almost impossible to mistake that chiseled face beneath the cloak, even though he is and soaked in rain as he is. You know that Rodrigo himself is sitting in the stirrups of the carriage.
As he gets near, she kind of puts up her hands to slow him down. And if he does so, she knows that he might speak her name, and eventually she lifts her hands to her lips and gives him sort of a shh motion. And she nears the carriage, placing her right hand on the side of it and looking up to Rodrigo. And quickly she says, "There are men around that bend. Men that work for Claudius."
Rodrigo stops the carriage and he looks at you with surprise, about to call out to you, but he sees he's quick enough, he's mentally sharp enough to see your hand and your gesture of silence as he slows his horses to a trot, and eventually they stop in the mud with the rain pounding overhead and pouring down their wet coats and their glossy black muscled animals as he dismounts the stirrups of the carriage, and he moves towards you. "How many?" he says, whispering to you, bringing the hood of his cloak tight around his face as the rain pounds around the two of you.
"It seems to be 3, but they are mortals."
"Villains," Rodrigo says, narrowing his eyes. You can see he has his sword with him. "What would you have me do, my lady?"
"Well, first of all, did my 3 comrades send you?"
"Of course. They didn't want you to be traveling this road unaccompanied. And for my part, I agree with them. These are dangerous times. And you are not native to these lands."
"Well, I suppose for once they were right. I didn't anticipate that I would come across anyone. But it seems I was wrong." She kind of looks over to the road, kind of quickly thinking on what to do. Then she looks back to Rodrigo. "I need to get to the monastery. It is a matter of urgency."
"They will set upon us. Likely they have a trap waiting for us. But I'm a very skilled warrior, my lady. I may not look it, but I'm much older than I appear. I can defend you against these villains."
"I don't know if I should risk your life. You do serve Hardestadt, and if you were killed..."
"If I was killed, my lord would understand I was protecting his interests," Rodrigo says with a kind of courage you can't help but admire.
She kind of gives Rodrigo somewhat of a smile. It's faint though, and it's clouded with concern as she looks back around the bend. She doesn't know what they might get into. She knows they'll have to fight. And though she's not much of a fighter, her Cainite skills come in quite handy during these times, and she might have to use them in order to get past this barrier that's keeping her from the monastery. But she's not sure if it's worth it. I mean, she's kind of going back and forth in her head for a few minutes. She looks back to Rodrigo. "Are you sure you can handle them?"
"I'm confident. I am a very skilled warrior, as I said, and my lord's blood pounds through my veins. I don't feel like anything could overcome me with such power at my command. And then, of course, you are not helpless either."
That is very true. She kind of hesitates and then looks back over to the bend. Do you believe it is a trap? I mean, they're guarding the road. Who knows what they've laid out there?
And you said they were wearing the livery of Claudius Giovanni.
Yes. And I could hear them discussing things on the matters.
That could be none other than Lothar. Rodrigo curls his lip, and for a moment you remember a flash back to the feast, the way Lothar treated Rodrigo, the way he whipped him across the face, as Rodrigo had been masquerading as one of Claudius's servants. You remember that Lothar and Rodrigo have history. That black-hearted villain will do anything to serve his master like a faithful dog. It'd be an honor to gut him. Rodrigo grips the sword at his waist.
Julieta listens to Diego a moment, realizing that if it is Lothar, he is a ghoul just like Diego. He's just as powerful as Rodrigo. Sorry, and he's just as powerful. But she could easily handle the mortals, and perhaps even Lothar, with Rodrigo's assistance. So eventually she looks back to Rodrigo and nods. I say we go ahead.
Rodrigo nods grimly. Hide in the carriage. I'll get up in the stirrups. When they stop us, I'll attack.
Sounds like a plan. She nods, and then she slips her hands through the handle of the carriage and pulls herself upwards and slips within it.
Relieved of the icy rain which patters overhead, Julieta, as soon as you close the door behind you, you are left with the warm, soft insides of Rodrigo's carriage. You can smell the perfumed interior and feel the lurch of the carriage as it moves forward as Rodrigo hurries his horses onward and they carry the two of you further down the road. Eventually, you feel the carriage stop, and using your augmented hearing, you can hear everything that happens outside the carriage as you hear, "Well, well, well, little Rodrigo, the fucking traitor." You recognize Lothar's voice. "Come down off that carriage and let me spit you, traitor." Alright, at this time, Julieta, since you have the element of surprise, you're in the carriage, I'll give you one action before what's...
Alright, so as soon as Julieta hears Lothar's seething voice speak to Rodrigo, she immediately turns on those K-Knight attributes of hers. Her fangs extend, and abruptly she pushes the carriage door open and reveals herself and hisses at Lothar and the two others. Is it two others that are standing with him?
Yeah, he is. You can immediately see he's flanked on either side by two footmen of Giovanni's.
Yeah, she directs her fangs at the three of them, and the most almost evil expression befalls her beautiful face as she directs her attention towards them. And the first thing can she do something? It's an action, right?
Oh yeah, you get a surprise action. They're completely taken off guard by you.
Well, first, let me just do something real quick. She's going to surge her body with blood.
Okay.
And then she is going to tackle one of the men.
All right, go ahead and roll your strength brawl.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted the whole time. God damn it. Your charge is not as straight as you had hoped it would be, actually. He manages to shove you off, and you slip just for a moment and fall to one knee as you were running full on in a sprint through mud and rain. So the ground is like slick and treacherous. So he raises the alarm as he points you out to the others. Alarm! And he points his sword at you, and the fight is on. So go ahead and roll your initiative. All right, almost got initiative done. The footman that you had charged is ready for you, and he turns around to face you with his sword drawn, but seeing your wild eyes and the beast in naked display on your face with your fangs bared, he actually has to steel himself. And he does manage to hold his ground as he faces you with sword in hand and steps in with a swing. And he manages to hit. Go ahead and roll your soak, Julietta. Your soak is your stamina. plus your clothing. Clothing is going to give 1 rating of armor. All right, you managed to take 5 levels of lethal damage, Julietta, as he charges you, and he completely runs you through on his sword as his the blade of his sword explodes out of your back. You drop to mauled. You're -2 to your dice pools. Go ahead and describe Julietta as her howling, bared fangs as she's spitted on the end of his sword as he charges her with a direct hit.
Ugh! She screams, just a horroring scream as the sword just slams into her. And she is just gutted, and her blood is everywhere, and she's just like, immediately, she, in reflex, grabs hold of his hands that are around this sword. And she can't do anything, right? I mean,
blood mixes with the rain as you grip his the hilt of his sword that he's holding on his handle as he gets his face very close to yours. You can see the fear in his eyes. That would have killed any other ordinary woman, and yet you are still gripping for him, and he looks horrified that you're not dead. As we go now to Lothar, who is charging towards the carriage with his sword drawn, throwing himself at Rodrigo. Die, villain! As he lays into Rodrigo with vicious swings from below, even though he's at a disadvantage. Lothar's stats. That's right. And he manages to hit. As Lothar begins slashing at Rodrigo, he catches Rodrigo several times in deep cleaving wounds on his legs, and though he opens up his flesh and you see the blood flow down, Rodrigo's unholy, ghoulish nature saves him as he, as you see the wounds opened up on his legs, they vanish, and he draws his own sword with a glare. As we go now to Julietta, who spitted on the end of this man's sword.
Julietta is just unbelievably angry at this point, and she knows that she needs to get away from this man, so she is actually sorry guys, I'm back. Julietta is going to
Actually, before you roll anything, Julietta, go ahead and make a self-control roll, difficulty 7, not to frenzy.
okay.
You barely manage to hang on to your senses as the beast is screaming in your head. Go ahead and describe your action as you spend your blood.
Sorry guys, I keep muting myself. Julietta is she's holding on to this guy's hands as his hands are shaking and gripping the sword in her, and she immediately douses herself with blood to heal herself around this sword. And it's her action, right?
Yep. And actually, as the flesh closes up around the blade, he yanks the sword out, leaving only behind a superficial wound in the middle of your body. And it's still open, but it's almost completely healed, and his eyes go wide with terror.
As he stumbles back with the sword and she completely heals, Julietta eyes this man up and down, and the beast is just on the verge of coming forward, but she's trying to hold it together. But she knows she needs to take this guy down, so she goes to tackle him once more.
All right, strength brawl, difficulty 6. He is easily overpowered by your monstrous strength. Go ahead and describe it as you tackle him to the ground.
Julietta, her fangs are hissing and dripping, and they are just extended outward as she hisses at him and immediately steps forward, and with all that power in her body, she slams him down into the mud.
Help! He starts shrieking underneath you. All right, we go now to the second footman, who is hearing the cries of his companion, who runs up to try and stick Julietta with his own sword to help his companion, his comrade in arms. And he manages to score a direct hit. All right, go ahead and roll your soak, Julietta. He plunges his sword into your back, and for the second time tonight, you are completely run through as you take 4 levels of lethal, dropping to mauled, spearing you clean through. Go ahead and describe what happens as Julietta is impaled from behind.
Julietta immediately feels the sword slam into her back, and she sits upright, even though her hand is still clenched around the man beneath her's neck, and she screams out in anger and in pain as that sword just dives into her.
We go now to Rodrigo, who jumps in a very surprisingly skilled fashion from the top of the carriage, crossing blades with Lothar stepping into him with a vigorous attack, yelling, "For Lord Hardestadt!" as he starts swinging his sword. And scores a direct hit. Lothar is going to roll his soak. He actually scores several hits across Lothar's face, slashing his face in several directions, and though some of the wounds tighten and close up from his own ghoulish nature, Lothar yells, "Yeah!" as he is set upon by Rodrigo in a furious blow of sword swipes. And just as we begin a new round of combat, a figure darts from the shadowy forest, a hooded figure. One moment. We see a hooded figure dart from the woods and charge to where Giulietta is struggling with the two men, one of them with his sword in her back and the other howling in terror underneath her. We see the hooded figure jump and dive, tackling the footman that has Giulietta upon his sword. The man is taken completely off guard. He's going to try and resist at an increased difficulty. And just barely manages to throw the hooded figure off of him. Although he is distracted, his sword is withdrawn from Giulietta, ripped out of the wound with a spray of blood from the rain hammering overhead as she is awash in vitae, and the smell of it is thick in the air. You hear the hooded figure grunt as he slams onto the ground, getting the attention. The footman underneath him is struggling quite violently, trying to get rid of the monster atop him as Giulietta has attacked him. Giulietta, go ahead and roll your strength brawl, difficulty 6, to try and resist his efforts to get free. You manage to easily pin him to the ground, Giulietta. Go ahead and describe this struggle as he screams and tries to fight you off, tries to push you, but you're much too strong.
Giulietta is unbelievably annoyed and angry at this point, and her eyes are just zeroing in on this soldier beneath her, and gently in manner, almost creepily, she slowly begins to move her hands around his neck, and she's going to attempt... Oh wait, it's not my turn. But she's just like holding him down.
All right, we go now to Lothar, who is holding his action, wounded and bleeding in the rain, staring hatefully at Rodrigo with his sword drawn. "You filthy blackguard!
You are never worthy to serve the Lord Giovanni.
Julieta, it is your turn as Lothar spits insults at Rodrigo.
As Julieta nears her hands around this man's neck, she's going to attempt to break it.
All right. Wait, what, Julieta?
She's going to attempt to break the man beneath her neck.
Oh, wow. Okay. Roll Strength Brawl, difficulty 8. He's going to get to resist. You need 3 successes. Roll that 10 again. He manages to get his hands up and stop you from twisting his head in that horrible fashion. And actually, no, you're in a dominant posture. He should have been in increased difficulty. So I'm going to say that was at difficulty 6. I'm changing my mind, sorry. So you actually got 1, 2, 3. You actually got 3 successes. He was at difficulty 8 because, yeah, no, you succeed. Because you're in a dominant posture. You are on top of him. You have him. He should have been at difficulty 8. You managed to snap his neck. Go ahead and describe it.
Julieta just gently slinks her wet fingers around his neck, and every part of her is just merging into her hands, and she is unbelievably angry. She just wants this man to die. I mean, 2 of them hit her with a sword, and she has just had it. So immediately, not even giving him time to say a word, she cracks his neck to the right and breaks it.
You see his jaw break with the movement, and you see his tongue hang out with a horrible cry as you hear the breaking of his cervical vertebrae just completely shatter, and the light go out in his eyes as he is killed. Now a corpse left underneath you with nothing but sweet blood. We go now to the footman, who is struggling with the mysterious figure who had managed to throw him off, and turns to look at him. He's about to set upon the hooded figure before turning to see Julieta snap the man's neck, his only comrade. He's going to need to try and pull himself together after seeing something like that. And he barely manages to hold on to his sanity as he's shaking with fear, standing before Julieta, and he doesn't seem to know which target to hit, but instead he turns to focus on the mysterious figure who is on the ground and just rising back up to his feet as the footman attacks. Mysterious figure is going to try and soak. He is cut deep on his arm as the footman reaches down with his hand. He brings his sword high up and he brings it down in a slash on the hooded figure's shoulder, and just cleaves his shoulder in a deep wound. And we see, as the camera focuses in on the hooded figure, he rises to his feet, and we see a slight limp with the way he's carrying himself, his hood hanging wetly over his head as he brings his own sword up out from underneath his cloak, and we see the hooded figure's cloak fall away. So we see for the first time who he truly is. You recognize Matteo, that the former soldier who had looked for work with Lord Giovanni, who had refused to kill you, any of you, at the banquet, and was beaten nearly to death. As a result, Matteo brings his own sword up. We can see he's wearing chainmail, which is gleaming wetly in the rain, as he narrows his eyes at Giovanni's soldier. "Unhand the lady," he says in a low voice. As we go now to Rodrigo, who is dueling with Lothar. As Rodrigo runs forward to slam his sword home. We go now to Lothar, who has saved his action. And Lothar is going to try and parry. And manages to handily parry Rodrigo's death blow, turning it aside before using his own attack. And manages to strike Rodrigo's back as he goes charging past. Rodrigo's going to roll soak. Rodrigo takes his own blow in his back, opened up and wounded, just as Lothar is, as they continue to duel in the rain. And as Lothar used his action, we're going to go now to Julieta. Julieta, you see the footman is attacking the hooded figure, who now turns out to be Matteo, and you recognize him as he stands in defense of you with his obvious limp, holding up his sword bravely to fight this Giovanni thug.
Julieta sees who this hooded figure is now. She recognizes him, and as the footman and him go at one another, she's going to start to feel some sort of power that's kind of within her, and she's going to try and focus it on this footman. So Julieta is kind of keying in on this man who's about to attack Matteo, and she's not quite sure what this power is, but she's going to focus it on this man, and she kind of feels almost this thing emerge in her throat as she's using it and focusing it on him. She's going to use Black Vial.
Okay, roll your manipulation empathy, difficulty 3. That power is called Incubus Humor. All right, roll intense again. Wow. The power of your madness comes pouring out in a supernatural wave, and you feel that power, that gift, crush the other man's mind completely as he breaks and begins sobbing, his tears invisible in the wet of the rain as he falls to his knees and begins crying. Don't kill me! As he covers his face with his hands. Oh, just let me die. Completely broken him as his body shakes and sobs, and Mateo limps up to the fallen form of the man as he kneels before him. Gladly, villain. He raises his sword and brings it down. Alright, he hits him directly on the back of his neck. There's no need for a damage roll. Mateo decapitates the sobbing soldier right before your eyes, Julieta, as blood erupts from the stump in his neck and sprays all over the road. We go now to Rodrigo, who whips around, having just been struck in the back. And he turns to face Lothar, with his sword brandishing. Lothar grins, his jagged yellow teeth grinning widely at him, having got the upper hand in that last exchange as Rodrigo yells and charges Lothar once more. And scores a massive hit. Lothar is going to try and dodge, because it's the only thing he can do to try and get out of the way. And the rain is slick, so making the ground slick, so he's going to be at increased difficulty. Yeah, he doesn't. He manages to cut away one success from the attack, but he does not get away in time. As the sword bites down. Yeah, and he takes 5 levels of damage, lethal. Rodrigo charged him, and Lothar tried to dodge, but his foot slipped in the mud, only just in time to see Rodrigo's sword plunge directly through his heart, deep into his chest, the blade exploding out the back. As Lothar he coughs blood and he's like hawking and coughing, spitting blood, his tongue protruding from his mouth as Rodrigo's handsome face is screwed up in a look of fury and hatred, driving the sword deeper and deeper before plunging it into the hilt all the way down. And Lothar collapses with a shudder. Rodrigo pulls his sword out of Lothar's body and staggers back in the wet, rain-slicked road, turning to look around and take in his surroundings. And as Rodrigo turns, in the aftermath of the battle, he turns to look at Matteo, who is standing there with his bad leg and his sword, his Italian sword brandished. Matteo limps around to look at The two of you take the both of you in, blood still wet on his sword, gleaming in that chainmail that he's wearing, that old, well-oiled chainmail. Rodrigo looks at him and squints before looking at him, and then Julieta, and then at him again. Who the devil are you? And with that, that is the end of the scene. As we end that violent conflict, we're now at 2 o'clock.